Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was happily sitting at my table this morning having my coffee and eating some raisin toast, and I got into the second section. I read this article about MnSCU faculty assail cell phone rule, and I discovered, to my surprise, that MnSCU wanted out of their hearts and minds. They also wanted their cell phones, and I was pretty shocked at that, and I remembered the story about Apple and the terrorists, and I thought, well, gee, none of the people I know that work at MnSCU are terrorists, and so what could they possibly want? And so I read further, and so I was really pretty shocked that over the objections of the faculty and these very well-meaning staff who work there, that they were just going to demand that cell phones could be taken in starting tomorrow. And so it's kind of like, you plug in the phone and then you just, here's the MnSCU hotline, and then, hi there, and it just didn't seem right. And I thought further, Mr. Chair and members, that the member who occupied this seat before me, former Senator Brandon Peterson, would have had a similar digestive problem with his breakfast and might have done exactly the same thing that I'm doing today. And frankly, Mr. Chair and members, I've been looking through a little bit since my breakfast time, and there is a state policy in place. But holy cow, if we're going to be a state that imposes this kind of a change on staff who we have trusted so far and have failed to provide any state electronics for, and after hearing a 14-page objection to this discussion in December, we address a couple and then move forward and coerce them to do this? What on earth? We struggle now with keeping faculty to serve and to help them enjoy their career with us and to stay in the system. And so to do this kind of an act, to me, is like, holy cow, holy cow. And so what you have before you is a relatively hastily written amendment to talk about a report, and they should talk to us. But I want to tell the MnSCU folks, there's a term in the legislature called placeholder, and so I'd love to have them report. But I think as this conversation matures, and as this bill moves along, many people might have a thought about how best we need to intervene about this. But I think it's timely, Madam Chair. Thank you for scheduling the hearing today. And thanks to the reporter for making sure it hit the news. Well, we could still have a time to address it. We are a free society. We get to do things with our phones that are private to us. We have pictures of our families and hopefully no bad pictures on there. I have some bad poses, Madam Chair, but please don't put that out there. But we have emails that go to and from our friends and our families, and maybe a nice affectionate thought from a spouse. And it's not my employer's business. And so we discussed something that came up in conference last year that should have more vetting. I urge MnSCU, vet this thing and get some buy-in and treat the people that you hire with some respect and some understanding about how to bring them together. The people I met, every MnSCU faculty person I met is amazing. They're dedicated to their students. They love what they do. They could actually make more money in many other walks of life, but they've chosen to invest themselves in this work. And so they're my employees too as the food chain goes up, and so they work for me, and I want to make sure that they have their time to protest and to discuss this further. I urge, this doesn't say stop, but I urge MnSCU to stop. To stop today, give me back my phone, unhook me from the little pipeline that you're going to be putting me at risk about, and let me have the freedom of my phone and discuss it. There's a reason you have an IFO. There's a reason you have groups of faculty that talk together, because they can agree and cooperate. And then you have I understand the need, I understand the problem, but you don't do it overnight and have people discover it in the paper, and you don't ignore the concerns of your very, very trusted employees and just jam ahead with a policy. So what do you really think, Senator Abeler? Anyway, so with that, Mr. Chair, I would move the A9 amendment. And I'm tangled up in the MnSCU wire here. Anyway, see how it happens, Madam Chair. And so what this amendment calls for is a report back about how it's all going and their policy, and we'll be out of session by then. But I have a feeling that as this goes forward, the language might change by the time it gets to the floor, Madam Chair, and I urge its adoption. I do imagine other members might want to chat about this, or the chair, or I think MnSCU might want to offer a thought. And so, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the opportunity to offer this, and I hope that we can adopt this at the end of the discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Abeler, just to be clear, this policy, your amendment, is in regard to privately owned versus those are electronic devices that might be owned by university or college.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And I didn't clarify that part. This is about privately owned phones. It turns out that most of the phones and laptops used are privately owned because that's not something provided by the employer. Had they supplied phones and electronic devices, in a way that they could use them, this would be moot because the people wouldn't be using it for those purposes. So that's correct, Mr. Chair.
Very good.
Mr. Chair.